Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor while his daughter is upstairs having a voice lesson. If you hear some singing, that's where it comes from. Today I am extremely excited to review The Patents of Nobility, the new album by Electronica. I will explain my confusion at the word new in a second. I'm initially just going to give you my immediate take, which is this is a singular work. It is unlike anything I have ever heard. I have not heard everything. I am a French professor by trade, not a music critic, so maybe there is something else out here that is this kind of mix of rap music, mystical philosophy, art school sound collages, and mixtapes. Like a mixtape in the sense of the way rap artists use it, like putting out an album that's not quite finished but still has a lot of good songs on it, and mixtape in the sense of what I used to make when I was in high school and college, like different songs that I wanted to share with people. All of it put together in this album, which is unbelievable, and just I am very excited to have been able to listen to it, and I cannot wait to talk about it. Now, I call it a new album. It's not a new album. I don't fully understand this whole story. It was like he announced it, and then he released the track list in 2012, and then he never released it. And then it was leaked last week, and then he just put it out. And the album has that feeling of something that was found or leaked or something unofficial. It's rough. It doesn't feel mastered. It doesn't even feel fully mixed. Not all the songs are completely finished. But him releasing it like this, I think, is a sort of freedom, I think, for this artist, who I don't know very well at this point, but I'm learning to love. I really enjoyed his last album as well. And it seems as though this is just as good of an excuse as any just to put it out there. Doing this move of releasing something that was leaked reminds me a little bit actually of a different artistic genius, Frank Zappa, who took all of his bootlegs that people were selling and just rebranded them and sold them. He's sort of like owning the fact that his music was stolen and released against his rights. I'm releasing this video on Friday. I've been able to listen to it for the past 3 days, and I mainly say that because it came out on Tidal music streaming. They don't sponsor me, but I think they should. It's the only service I've ever used, and I only started using it because of the life of Pablo. It's true. The thing that's funny is the last album I reviewed was an album from Griselda, and Griselda comes out with an album basically every week. One of their members does. And I'm tempted to say that Electronica is the opposite, right? Because his album is supposed to come out in 2012, it doesn't come out until 2020, and then he releases the album he should have released in 2012 in 2020. Just like this huge amount of time of just doing nothing. But I don't think it's safe. I don't think it's a good thing to say that they are the opposites. I don't think so. I think they're still a same part of the amazing vitality of hip-hop music and this moment that we're living in. And it really is, all you have to do to see what a great moment we're living in culturally is just look around a little bit. Just spend a little bit of time with those Griselda albums and a little bit of time with this album, and you'll see these opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of approach and subject matter, but still what we find is this amazing emotional and spiritual and sort of energy behind hip-hop music that exists right now that can be so good in so many different ways. This is, and this is one of the theses of the album, a great time to be alive. And part of the reason is that these albums are coming out. With this release, I now understand the disappointment that people felt with A Written Testimony. You can see my review up there. I think it was a pretty good review. I'll talk about it later too. But I understand the disappointment that people must have felt because this is so exciting. Like this music is announcing such like a singular voice and a sort of new producer and rapper. There just aren't enough people like that, enough people like Andre 3000, enough people like Kanye who are capable of doing it all with this sort of mystical cloak around them, which is able to sort of project this mystery and sort of enlightened opaqueness to all three of these producers. So I certainly understand that when A Written Testimony, which is a great album anyway, came out, that it doesn't quite feel like the continuation of whatever this is. But hey, we have both. And I think in a way, this album does remind me a lot of the album that brought me to Tidal. It does remind me of Life of Pablo in the way that it feels like an artist who is just pushing something out, whether or not it's ready, because they just have to get it out. The whole tone of it, I would say, is mournful and introspective, but it's never like cheesy or sad or overly emotional. It's pretty difficult because it's very earnest. It's very emotionally honest. And whenever you're earnest, you run the risk of being made fun of being laughed at. But he manages to completely skirt around that by just being very earnest, but very low key. And I don't really know how he's able to walk so many fine lines that he could have fallen off and made an album that is laughable and just whack. But he absolutely does not. It's a really smart album, but at the same time, I don't get the, you know what it is? I don't think he's insecure. And most rappers are extremely insecure. Most people are extremely insecure. But you know that most rappers are insecure because they spend most of their time talking about how great they are, right? So whatever Jay Electronica does, he doesn't have that feeling. And I think that's what gives him this sort of weird mystical aura, that he's able to just like be comfortable not releasing an album. Just be comfortable with who he is. And that spirit infects this album in a way that I can't think of in any other rap album I've ever heard. He does make a fair number of references to pop culture, which I think are interesting because they're very down the middle pop culture. He's not looking for niche things, like a big reference to Wizard of Oz you have back there. He talks about growing up on Tatooine, like Luke Skywalker. That's one of my Empire Strikes Back vintage carded figures. He talks about the scum and villainy of Tatooine. That's why I got the sand people and the hammerhead there. So it's kind of funny having this way of being sort of really obscure references, really right down the middle references, and all of these musical references, which are amazing. I said this reminds me of a mixtape, partly in the Drake sense of a mixtape, like it's not an album, but will you buy it? But really in the sense of someone who's just sharing their music with somebody else. Like, I found this beat, I found this song, you might not have heard it, check it out. And hip-hop has always been able to do that. I can't tell you the number of musicians that I have discovered just through hip-hop. Like Barrington Levy, the reggae guy, just comes to mind. I saw him in concert a few years ago. Just because he was on that track by Shine, I was able to discover a reggae artist who I never would have discovered elsewise. And this has been repeated hundreds of times throughout hip-hop. But there's something about the way this album is, where at times it feels like he's just pressing play. And like we're just kind of sitting there listening to it with him. There's something relaxed about this album that goes along with that sense of self-assuredness, which again is just not the hallmark of most hip-hop. I would say, to a certain extent, he talks at one point, he says that he's not a rapper, he's a prophet on a hill. I don't really go for that, but I would say that in a way similar to Kanye, it's not so much that he's a rapper or producer, it's that he's a real artist. And at times this album feels like a collage made by a sound artist, somebody who thinks about sounds and puts interesting sounds together and plays with them, not necessarily to make people dance or to sell records, but just to make something of artistic worth. That's what this thing is. How the hell did this guy sit on this for 8 years? I don't get it. Sort of thematically, one of the main things that keeps the album linked and cohesive is the same two sound effects that he uses all the time, which are children screaming, "Yay!" and people clapping. And I think that helps to override some of the more mournful tones of the album. Just having that as a sort of producer tag is quite funny, because the production is so downbeat. But things are actually usually basically always connected, song to song. There's some kind of link between them, which again kind of reminds me of this sort of mixtape feel and keeps this sustained, slightly downbeat atmosphere all the way through. It's worth pointing out that at no point on this entire project does he ever refer to doing anything illegal. I don't even think he talks about like smoking a joint. I don't know, he doesn't. So that's pretty interesting. That's pretty rare. And at no point, I think, does he ever do any boasting. Maybe there's one or two times, but this is pretty rare as far as hip hop goes because it's more than the fact that he's not doing those things. It's that he doesn't define himself by not doing those things. It's the greatest pitfall of a lot of alternative rappers. He's like, I don't rap about money. I don't rap about money. Those guys suck because they rap about money. And that doesn't make you interesting. It's like he's sort of above it. Wow, man, this is great. Well, let me get through track by track here. I'm really excited to hear it. Can you hear my daughter? I can just barely hear her. She does these warm-up exercises. It's very cute. It's like a little pigeon upstairs. So let's talk about this album track by track. Every track is worth listening to. If you haven't listened to it, it's now available on all streaming services. Just put your headphones in and listen to it. And listen, maybe hip hop isn't your thing. You know, maybe you're here because you saw my Fleet Foxes video or whatever. This is transcendent hip hop. Like, this is stuff that I could play in my living room, and my whole family could just hear it and like it. Not because it's easy, not because it's like poppy, but just because like there's a real quality to it that transcends any genre. So it starts off with the song Real Magic, and inexplicably, Ronald effing Reagan. I almost turned the album off when I heard this. We're about the same age, Jay Electronica and I, and I assume that as a follower of the Nation of Islam, and therefore quite interested in issues of racial equality, that he wouldn't be a fan of Ronald Reagan. So I don't know if he's using Ronald Reagan like as a joke. I don't know if he's using him just because it's a great speech. It's this weird speech where he's quoting Winston Churchill, another great son of a bitch in history, who's sort of falsely revered. It's a weird thing to have this double conservative politician at the beginning of your rap album, but Ronald Reagan is talking about like weird transcendental beliefs and things that you can't see. So it fits the theme of the album. And this really announces a lot of what makes this such a fascinating album, the themes of this whole song, because it seems like it's just about how technology distances us from the miracles of creation, which is an interesting theme. It's increasingly important. I wish I could tell 2012 Jay Electronica that it gets a lot worse. A lot of beautiful lines like, I put more honey in my tea, but no thoughts about the bees. But then it seems like, I was talking about this with my son and about he has this line, planet Earth is a hospital and we're on a respirator. And he was like, well, that's kind of a boring life. Like, that's a boring view. Like, it's a boring view just to think that life is terrible and things suck and things are the worst and 2020 is the worst, man, right? Like, 2012 is the worst. Whatever it is, that's a boring way to look at things. And my son's right. But what Jay Electronica does is something else. I would say the thesis of this album, the overarching thesis, is the world is bad, living is good. There you go. So everything that's in the world is kind of corrupt and bad, including himself, and he's very aware of his weaknesses. But the act of breathing, the act of getting up every day, as he says, it's a genuine miracle that I woke up today. It is a genuine miracle that I woke up today. That is the magic that he's talking about. The real magic is in existing, which makes it a very interesting album because it is both saying life is good, life is bad at the same time, while emphasizing the things that are good are not the things that we can buy, are not the politicians that we elect, are not the buildings or the cars or whatever it is. It's just breathing every day and bees and honey. It's really quite nice. The whole time you have the children shouting, yay, and it's a very mournful song, very consciously written lyrics. So he didn't improvise these and rap over them. You can tell because he uses the term passers-by. And I mean, nobody says passers-by. Most people say passerbys, right? Like, this is like very, this is a Grammarly hip-hop, right? He very much knows how to work it. And it's cool because there's a lot of subtle dynamics that I wonder if they're a part of the original album or just what was leaked, but things kind of get louder and louder until we get to the next track, New Illuminati, which is maybe my least favorite track on the album. It's good, but the beat is a little bit too chopped up. He's kind of quoting Notorious B.I.G. a lot, and just themes about Illuminati, even if he's saying that they are the new Illuminati, isn't that interesting. The cover kind of hints at that. It's got like a picture of an eye and like a triangle and sort of weird symbolism. It's got weird symbolism, but that's not my favorite thing about this album. So I'll just kind of skip that and get to Patents of Nobility. Remember when I said this is like a sound collage? This is what I'm talking about. It's some sample that I almost recognize mixed with a commercial for a Dick Tracy like wristwatch communicator toy. And they're just put there together, and there's no explanation, there's no rapping. It feels like it's a guy who's just goofing around, maybe trying to make some larger point, maybe not. But whatever it is, it's a oddly beautiful combination, which then leads in, and the album really starts going here with the song Life on Mars, which uses a sample from the song You Can Fly My Plane, which weirdly enough was used on the song Bound 2 by Kanye on the Yeezus album 1 year later. There's a lot of back and forth between Kanye and Jay Electronica, and I don't know which way it goes. It's clear that Jay Electronica mentions later that he just wants to be like Kanye, but it feels like a lot of things that Kanye does he wouldn't have done if he hadn't heard Jay Electronica do it. So I guess that's what happens when good artists are alive at the same time. They borrow from each other. Just a very nice kind of mournful sample again. And it's a song about loneliness. And it's a song about what he calls a kamikaze love. Now, according to Lyric Genius, this is about his relationship with Erykah Badu. I don't care about that. What I do care about is his awesome wordplay. He does a lot of, intentionally mispronouncing things like marriage in my carriage and plays with that. And then he delivers what may be the most revolutionary hip-hop line I've ever heard. The most unexpected 2 words in hip-hop history that I have never, ever, ever heard. I apologize. That's the end of the song. Those are the last 2 words. It's a heartbreak song that ends with a simple, direct apology. The belief and the power of masculinity is often built into the concept of being right and never apologizing and just pounding forward and force and correctness and rectitude and hardness. This moment is completely unexpected because it is just saying, I'm wrong. And through that moment, right? Through that moment, he becomes like the strongest rapper you've ever heard. You might laugh at me, and it borders on political, so I apologize to people who don't believe that toxic masculinity exists. It does. It doesn't mean all men are evil, but it does hurt men. What I tell my son is the strongest thing is to admit your weaknesses. Like, that's the strongest thing. If you can't admit your weaknesses, you are weak because you get broken. He is admitting his weaknesses on this song in a way, and again, he's not doing it as a way to identify himself as I'm the rapper who does this. He just does it. That was almost the most surprised I could have been by this album. But let me tell you the real reason I'm most surprised by this album. This album, I saw that this album came out. I don't know if it came out on Tuesday or Wednesday, but it was released to Tidal before the usual Friday release date, okay? The day that this came out, and I'm not joking, I taught a song called Bonnie and Clyde by Serge Gainsbourg and Brigitte Bardot. I was using Serge Gainsbourg in my class that I teach about French rock and hip-hop music. I was using him as a way to explain the changes in society that were happening and how this song and other songs of Brigitte Bardot showed the influence of American music in French music. I used it to show the way that sort of American folklore was becoming international and the way that Serge Gainsbourg, who used to be a jazz genius, reinvented himself as a pop genius and learned how to make songs that would work and sell as pop music, even though that wasn't his natural song. I was teaching this song that very same day. It was quite an amazing moment. It is worth noting this is not the first time this song has been sampled. The French rapper MC Solar sampled the track for Nouveau Western, which is a song all about like how the ghettos are like the new Wild Wild West, which is fine. So this sample in this song is basically a straight lift from Serge Gainsbourg and Brigitte Bardot and their song Bonnie and Clyde. The song is called Bonnie and Clyde. I didn't say that. I'm so excited, I can't even express myself. The first time I heard it, I was like, well, first of all, this is great for me because anybody who likes very good hip-hop music is now going to know a Serge Gainsbourg song quite well. I was almost like a little bit like disappointed because it's such a direct lift. I was sort of like, is this like Puff Daddy sampling Kashmir? Like, did he just taking this? But actually he manipulates the sample just enough in a way where he just keeps on repeating, écoutez l'histoire, listen to the story, listen to the story. And he does this weird little thing with looping these strings that are in the back, and just the idea of having the song, and he includes entire chunks of the song where Serge Gainsbourg singing and Brigitte Bardot sings, and then he comes in and raps over it. It has this very, like, cool feeling, like I'm telling you, like you're just sitting around with a guy who's like, hey, let me play you some cool music that you probably haven't heard. And he presses play, and then he just drops a verse. Kind of some typical verses from this album. I'll read you a little bit of them, just so you get an idea of some of his lyricism. Just like I told you on Extra Extra, you're effing with a young black Professor Tesla. This is before Elon Musk destroyed the word Tesla. It takes a nation of millions to advertise you, but only one Benedict to sabotage you. Ever heard of Malcolm Little? Ask Elijah. You'll never reach heaven till you're past Defia. So kind of interesting concept here. He's talking about Malcolm X, whose original name was Malcolm Little. Ask Elijah, referring to the Reverend Elijah Muhammad, who helped to convert Malcolm X. And all of these kinds of like very conscious references to the Nation of Islam and talking about just very interesting, well-written lyrics and really good flow and very dense. Like, you know, only one Benedict to sabotage you. Like, there's something about that delivery and that choice of words which gives it a certain strength. And then he references Darth Vader, which is funny. And then he mentions Mont Blanc pens and says a felt tip Mont Blanc pen, which doesn't make sense because they make fountain pens. They don't make felt tip pens, but it's okay. And also he might make the common mistake thinking that those are French, those are German. French, weirdly enough, French fountain pens are called Waterman. That's my big dream, by the way, that rap artists start getting into pens instead of watches and just buy like $10,000 like pens, because those are so much cooler than watches. So that's a really exciting moment for me to get to have such a currently relevant song come out at the same time that I'm teaching about this track from the 60s. And it's a really good beat, and it's just awesome. I mean, the Serge Gainsbourg song is great. Now, Serge Gainsbourg recorded a song with Brigitte Bardot that included him probably having sex with her in the studio. And unfortunately, she was married at the time, and when her husband heard this, that sort of ended his relationship with Brigitte Bardot, who was at that time considered the most beautiful woman in the world. So after that, he ended up finding another girlfriend, and that girlfriend's name was Jane Birkin. And Jane Birkin and he made music together, amazing music together. They re-recorded that song that I just talked about and released it, and it became the song that I used to explain the sexual revolution. And they recorded a couple albums together, and she has a very kind of cool, shaky voice, and they made amazing art together. That's them back there. There's Serge Gainsbourg, and there's Jane Birkin, holding a bag. Not a Birkin bag, made by Hermès, which has nothing to do with her, and she didn't authorize. She was like a hippie. She wouldn't pay $25,000 for a bag. Anyway, so Serge Gainsbourg there and Jane Birkin there, they had a baby. The reason I'm telling you this story is that baby sings on the next song of the album, Charlotte Gainsbourg. I don't know how he did this. I don't know how I didn't hear about it. She's a great musician in her own right. It ends up being sort of like a coda to the previous song. And it's definitely not a rap song. It's just her singing and just being cool. She's just super cool. And her voice is like doubled, has this kind of like weird childish melody underneath. And then as it ends, a new melody comes in that's sort of like this sort of like this weird sort of like horn section that then becomes the basis of the next track, Shiny Suit Theory, which is already on his most recent album, Written Testimony, and I already talked about it. But this was the song that got me to really like Jay Electronica because he talks about going to a therapist. Why is Jay Electronica the only rapper strong enough to be emotionally vulnerable? Because he's the only one that I've heard who openly, actually that's not true. He's one of few who I've heard who openly admits to going to therapy. That leads on, if you want to know more about what I think about that song, check out my previous review. Memories and Merlot, which is another track about a relationship. It's just sort of about like, but it's weird because it's about a relationship, but it starts off with him telling a story about like his mom telling him about revelations, and just sort of like, and then it goes into talking about like this memory that he has with a woman. And here's another example of his sort of very sophisticated rhyme, like word choice and rhyming. Life is a storyboard. Actually, one second. I left this over here. It's too good of a prop. I left it out of reach, but I have it now. Life is a storyboard captured in a Polaroid. The memories, the jewel case. Life's a storyboard captured in a Polaroid. The memories in the jewel case, the camera is cold and bored. Like a corpse or C-3PO, the golden droid. Vivid flashbacks will leave you real sad or overjoyed. So the whole time in here, it's like he's talking about the nature of memory and how it plays into your thoughts and how it's captured and how it's like distorted by memory and how the memory can be positive or can be negative. It's just like a very deep meditation on the nature of recollection and happy memories and sad memories, and all mixed in with a reference to C-3PO, Was it worth it for me to take that pause to get my prop? Put it in the comments if it was worth it. Next up, we have a track called Better in Tune, an absolute highlight of this album. Could be my favorite track on the album. It's hard to choose. It's hard to even have a favorite track on the album because it's so stylistically consistent all the way through that it's the kind of album you put it on and you never want to take it off, right? It's not a collection of singles. But Better in Tune has a very bizarre juxtaposition. So the thing about collage and sound collage is it's all about juxtaposition, how you put things next to each other. So he has Farrakhan, okay, the leader of his faith, right? The leader of the Nation of Islam, giving a beautiful speech about the truth of God, okay? And then he juxtaposes that with Mr. Marvel from The Wizard of Oz, the guy who has a crystal ball and like talks to Dorothy on the side of the road. And he's all talking, this is the genuine crystal ball that helped Cleopatra see Mark Antony, whatever that was. So you have sort of like this real spiritualism and then this fake spiritualism, a sort of real deep spiritualism put next to a sort of fake pop culture spiritualism. And I think that's another thing that he's doing throughout the entire album. All these references to Wizard of Oz and Star Wars and all these goofy things, it's being used in the service of communicating a much deeper idea about the glory of existence and perhaps the glory of God as he sees it. It's sort of all at once. It's like, is he putting these things together to make fun of Farrakhan? I doubt it, right? But you could see it that way, that he's equating Mr. Marvel and Farrakhan. But on the other hand, perhaps equating Mr. Marvel and Farrakhan is not an insult to Farrakhan. Because what rap music can do, what hip-hop can do, what any good postmodern art like hip-hop can do, is recontextualize art in another setting. So this kind of throwaway scene from Wizard of Oz ends with him saying, close your eyes so that you can be better in tune with the infinite. That is a spectacular line. That is amazing. That is such good screenwriting. That is such good writing. I'm going to say it again. Close your eyes so you can be in better tune with the infinite. Did you know that was a line from Wizard of Oz? I didn't until I listened to the song like 20 times. Because all I associate is, there's no place like home and fly my pretties or whatever. Actually, she says fly, fly. She doesn't say fly my pretties. No thing. But that's not what we associate with Wizard of Oz. But recontextualizing it makes you understand that that scene in Wizard of Oz actually is deep. And that's what he's trying to do with this song, is get us better in tune with the infinite. And that's the nature of this song. And it's piano and strings. I think it's from the movie Babel. I read that. Like the weird Inarritu movie from like 2004. Very quiet, very mournful, and this great recontextualization. And here's maybe the best example of his style of lyrics. And this will be the last time I read from his lyrics, but I kind of have to because it's great. They might defeat the flesh, but they could never ever kill me. They might feel the music, but could never ever feel me. To the lawyers, to the sheriffs, to the judges, to the debt holders and the lawmakers, F you, sue me, bill me. That name on the birth certificate, that ain't the real me. The lies can't conceal me. The sunrise and the moon tides and the sky's gonna reveal me. My brain pours water out my tear ducts to heal me. My Lord is too beneficent. The message grab a hold to every ear it get whispered in. The waters in the bayous of New Orleans still glistening. He's from New Orleans originally. And we see just the beauty in that line, the anger at the world and the beauty of existence. It's all right there. The world sucks and life is wonderful. He also does make another reference to the, quote, synagogues of Satan. And on my last review, I got a lot of people upset with me for pointing out that I have that the Nation of Islam often has a aggressive attitude against the Jewish faith and people of the Jewish faith. It's just history. It's an unfortunate thing, which I happen to mention. I got a lot of comments saying, how dare you say that? It's not true. Or even worse, it's not that they think that it's everything they say is true, which, I don't buy for that. And then a lot of sort of obscure arguments about how, well, technically Jews are not the only people considered Semitic, so you can't be Muslim and anti-Semitic, which is true on paper, but not in terms of speech. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that again. There isn't too much of that sort of weird Public Enemy style throwaway anti-Semitic lines. This is the only one I could really hear, which again is mainly a bummer to me because it's the sort of the one thing that keeps me from just completely embracing this music, because that's I don't like that, right? Anyways, moving on, and please, dear God, don't have that be the only thing you comment on in this video. Like, talk about my daughter singing, or you know, like, I don't know, why Luke Skywalker sucks. But we don't need to talk about this. I guess we do. The song Letter to Fallon is interesting. I don't know what that means. I don't know what Fallon means. I guess I could have looked that up, but I don't do the show to review. I do the show, I don't do the show to do a ton of research. I do it mainly to share my thoughts. This is great because it has an interesting auto-tune to open up the track. Kind of a real heritage, I would say, of Kanye's 808 and Heartbreak. But it seems like the way that he's inspired by Kanye is a much deeper way than a lot of other people. I mean, Drake talks about being inspired by Kanye, but that's just sort of the sanguine, sort of like emotional, like the surface level stuff. This has like a much deeper sense to it, like the real understanding of the creative process and the need to express oneself despite whatever controversy might be swirling around you, despite whatever you might feel about yourself. And this is the one where he talks about being born on Tatooine. So there you go. Kind of reminds me of Rakim, from Eric B. and Rakim, actually, in the way he delivers, which I don't know if that's a common comparison, but not a lot of rappers remind me of Rakim these days, so that's pretty nice. And another one that's just very piano-led and has this very rhythmic breathing behind it, which happens a couple times on this album, like that kind of stuff. And then there's just a lot of these general themes about like his own persistence and the inability to to rewind the past. Then we get to Road to Perdition, which has another Ronald Reagan sample. I don't understand it. Why is Reagan getting so much love here? It's okay. I'm much more offended by Ronald Reagan than I've ever been offended by Farrakhan. No, okay, Jesus Christ. Now that's going to get some comments. This isn't a political channel, but I can't help it. If an artist is political and I discuss it, it becomes a political channel. It's nice, though. It's a nice quote from Reagan, who is a great orator, if nothing else, talking about having simple answers to complex problems, not easy, but simple. And this is the only track on the album that I'd say is like a real banger. Like, it's a real upbeat hip-hop track. Jay-Z is sampled from a different song, just saying, you know, we got this, breezy, or, you know, let it breathe. Just kind of like this phrase repeated over and over again. And this is the kind of song we just get kind of pumped up and psyched and kind of dance around. I wonder if this was like an attempt to make a hit, because this is the only song on the whole album that really feels to me like it could have been a hit, but it's nice. Then Welcome to Knightsbridge is the next song, a little bit of a forgettable track, kind of cool, like clapping and almost kind of Arabic rhythms actually, which then leads into Rough Love, which is sort of a gross sex song, but not quite. Very nice muted drum beats. His flow actually reminds me of Slick Rick in the song, who's now gotten love in 2 videos in a row. Kind of interesting play with words, like he refers to a woman having a chest like Angelina Croft, so like crossing Laura Croft and Angelina Jolie, which is kind of interesting. And then he does something else, which if I didn't get a lot of hateful comments in the comments section for talking about toxic masculinity, which people hate it when you talk about that, talking about anti-Semitism, which people hate, having an anti-Reagan stance, which people hate, you will especially dislike this, because in this song, he takes something implicit and makes it explicit. In most sexual songs about sex with women written by men, women are treated like objects. And I don't mean objects in the sense of like a plant or a speaker or a frame or a cup. I mean objects like an object in the sentence, like they don't have power. They are just things that are used by the subject. So the man is the subject of the sentence, and then the woman is the object. So man kisses woman. That woman has no impact on that verb. She receives the action of that verb. In language, that's what it's called. That's called a direct object. Man kisses woman. Man F's woman, okay? And the woman is the object. In this song, and that's always implied, in every single song that's ever been about, ooh, girl, I'm gonna sex you up, and all that stuff, rock and roll, rap, old-timey jazz, doesn't matter what it is. Like medieval songs about thy cunny, all that stuff. It all goes back to subject man, action on the object woman. And in this song, he actually says, she is a character and I am the author. So thank you, Jay Electronica. Next time I teach this very complicated concept of agency in romantic relationships in one of my classes on women and gender studies, I will be able to include this in this, because he's able to say it directly. He doesn't hide behind it. He's just saying what it is. I am the author. She is the character. I determine what she does. Anyways, interesting. Very, very, very smart album. And I don't actually, I wouldn't even really call this a particularly sexist song. It's just about, rough love and people like that. That's not inherently a male or female thing. But just the way that he says that. Like, she doesn't understand that I'm the author. It's great. Then goes to the next track, Night of the Round Table. Yes, and I also did mention that I sometimes teach women and gender studies classes. So at this point, my comment section, the only thing I could do to make this comment section worse is say something bad about Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan sucks. Okay. Night of the Round Table. Sorry, Bob Dylan fans hate me. I love Bob Dylan, but they hate me. Nights of the Round Table is cool because it starts off with a Jay-Z spoken word thing about the nature of art and about how genre music is kind of useless. Then there's a Winston Churchill quote. Again, we're only missing Charles de Gaulle, actually, for sort of like overly venerated, slightly nefarious figures of conservative politics. Another piano-led song. It's a very piano-led album. And this is the one where he talks about, I'm not a rapper, I'm an angel on the mountaintop. But this is cool because this song is so unfinished that half the verses are mumbled through. And this reminds me very strongly of Life of Pablo, which when Kanye released it, which then got me to get Title, a lot of the verses are unfinished. It's him just going, And I wonder, did Kanye steal this technique of leaving this in or not? But then it changes unbelievably and he starts singing and he has a beautiful voice. And like the drums come in and just the level of production on this album is outstanding. Even if it's not mixed or finished or it's very rough around the edges. It's just, listen to this song and just listen to the transitions between like the rapping parts and the singing parts and the little tiny details that he puts in. He is such an exciting artist. I mean, it's just ridiculous how, I almost swore, I don't swear on this channel, but it is ridiculous how exciting he is as a producer and a creator. It's just a real, real, real creator. And then we get to the song Run and Hide, which starts off with a slowed down David Bowie song, which is why I put him up there, his mugshot from Rochester, New York, where I'm from. He got arrested for possessing marijuana when he performed at the Rochester War Memorial. And this is the thing, like David Bowie, I don't know, I can't think of a time when he's ever been sampled in rap music. I mean, maybe Fame was sampled once or twice, but in general, he's not. But this song is just so unbelievably rich, because what he does is, he starts off with a slowed down sample. The track is Quicksand off of Hunky Dory, maybe David Bowie's best album in the 70s, up there with Ziggy Stardust, maybe better. And it made me realize this whole album even has kind of a Bowie feel to it. This sort of perspective of like life being magical, but the world not being great, this kind of like mystical feeling, the search, the kind of charisma, the effortlessness that Jay Electronica has. He does have kind of a Bowie feel. But then he brings in this quote, this sample of Bowie just going, from the song Quicksand, a very moving moment and a very moving song. And then he puts that and he loops it and makes it the sample. And then he gets this guy, the Bullets, to come in and sing, because he's a little bit of a stronger singer than Jay Electronica, and sings over it, and then loops in another chorus underneath it. And then he starts bringing the drum beat, and then he starts rapping. And this is just the most amazing. I'm going to play you some of it. And I can't really capture it. I can't capture how beautiful this song is. According to YouTube, the song actually came out in 2011, because I'm looking at it right here. I don't know. Listen, I'm Rip Van Winkle. I was asleep to music from 2000 to 2018. So I know nothing about your Jay Electronica. I'm just a caveman. But this is very exciting, this moment right here. So that's the Bullets singing over, and then the Bowie underneath. Just so well layered, so well put together, just great. And this guy is definitely a Star Wars nerd. He mentions the Western world being a hive of scum and villainy, like where Hammerhead hangs out. And then the album ends with 10,000 Lotus Petals, a vaguely Eastern sounding song with like flutes and guitars and I don't know. Is he even creating this music? Is he not? I don't know, but it's a perfect ending to this weird mixtape. So there you go. Hopefully you've made it through all of my scandalous statements, which I don't think are actually that scandalous, to enjoy this truly amazing work of art with us, which he has been hiding and he's now released. And now I am just as excited for whatever Jay Electronica is going to do next as you all were for the last 8 years. And I'm going to re-listen to written testimony too. God damn it. I love being alive. Isn't it great? You know, all these artists that I review, that's another reason I only do positive reviews. Because it's like they're the bees, man. You know, they're bringing us all this honey. Like, we are so fortunate to be living in a time with this much great music coming out all the time. So anyways, if there's any proof that God exists, I think it's good proof. Oh, Jesus Christ. Am I not talking about God? Okay, until next time, for my daughter and her music teacher and my brother who I'm about to go visit, there's the camera.